Hi everyone, Christina here from Sheridan Art and Designs, and today I want to talk about our next set of projects that we're working on. We're going into our Mandalorian projects, our cosplays. So the thing with our Mandalorians was that we were planning to apply to be part of the Mando Mercs crew, and if you don't know about them, I'll throw their link in the description below, but they have different groups in like all across the country, but you can apply and then they do like trooping events. So you can go and be part of the trooping events that they do and be part of their kind of guild. But to apply, your costume or your cosplay has to fit within their requirements. So I had to design my original Mandalorian character to fit within those parameters, and they're fairly extensive. I mean, I printed them out. They're like, it's a book of requirements. So I wanted to kind of talk today about how to take something like this that can be really intimidating and seem like it's really restrictive, and how I break it down into the really important stuff for me, and then go from there with my design. So what I've done is I've read through all of this, and you can see I like highlighted certain parts and things like that. And I started with a helmet idea. So I started with an idea for my helmet design, and I kind of built out from there. So if you start with kind of a core idea, or even just like colors that you know you want to use, or a certain kind of feeling you want to go for, you can kind of design your cosplay into whatever you want it to be while still fitting a pretty extensive list of requirements. So the bottom line of this is that they want the people who are going to be part of their guild and trooping with them to have high quality cosplays, right? So they don't want people with kind of half-assed slapped together or all bought cosplays necessarily. I mean, you can buy them, but they really like to see people putting in the effort and making really cool, high quality stuff, right? So that's to keep in mind when you're just manufacturing all of these things, is like, you want to put that extra effort in, pretend like you're going for, a competition or something, and you want it to really look nice. So with that in mind, I'm going to take you through kind of my boiled down bullet points that I took away from this in this video, and then we'll kind of talk about where my design went from there after I kind of, learned all the rules, right? So the first thing I looked at was like, okay, what are the armor requirements? Because obviously if you're going to make a Mandalorian, you have to have certain pieces of armor. If you're not going to be part of the guild, you can kind of free reign with that, right? But as part of the guild, you have to have a certain kind of armor and a certain number of pieces. So I chose for mine the post-Imperial era, which, if you don't know, is kind of the era that The Mandalorian, the TV show, takes place in. So it's that post the first set of movies, but before this new Disney set of movies. It's that like in-between area where The Mandalorian takes place. So for this set, you have to take one of the 4 or 5 main characters that you see in the Mandalorian TV show, and you either have to recreate their armor, or you have to use their armor as a jumping off point to create your own character. So they don't say you can't have any original characters, they just say that you have to kind of base one of your armor off of kind of one of their looks. So I went with Bo-Katan for mine, mostly because the helmet that I have is from the Bo-Katan style, but she's also one of the only, aside from the armor and stuff, she's one of the few female Mandalorians that you see pretty extensively. So you have a good all-around shot of her stuff, and it's pretty easy to find images of her on there. So I started with her, but I'm going to change kind of some shapes of my armor. But that's where you jump off from, is kind of pick your inspo character, the one you're going to jump off from in post-Imperial, and then go from there. So the next thing you have to have is an ab plate, which is pretty standard set of most of the Mandalorian armor. And then they say you have to have 4 lower body armor pieces. So 4 pieces on your legs. But the key here is that they don't have to be symmetrical. So you don't have to have the same pieces on both legs. They just has to be 4 total. So like if you want a knee on one, a shin on the other, if you only want one thigh, you know, you can kind of, there is a lot of flexibility in that. And that's key when you're looking through these requirements, is look for places where you can get flexibility, right? Loophole it to high heaven, right? Because that'll be where you get those creative spaces, is like, okay, I have to have 4, but they don't have to match, right? Or I can mix and match whatever I want. So keep that in mind. The next thing is that you have to have a back plate, even if you're wearing a cape or a poncho, not a big deal. Unless you're building out a whole jetpack, then you can skip the back plate. But the other thing that they put in here is some kind of measurements. So like the back plate, for instance, has to take up 2/3 of your back, right? The gauntlets, same thing, 2/3 of that forearm measurement. So you just have to be careful when you're constructing. And a lot of the stuff in here, I mean, it seems really daunting and seems really restrictive at first, but a lot of it is kind of about fabrication rules. So like how things measure out on you, you know, and that's really more to make sure that it all fits the way it should and it looks the way it should at the end versus, you know, if you're not following those rules, you could have something really vastly different and not necessarily in universe. So you want to try and keep it in universe. You want it to look like it should, right? You want your gauntlets to look like they're the same size as everybody else's, right? But your gauntlets could have a different look to other people's, right? So that's where you get that freedom. So you have to have a back plate. You don't have to have symmetrical matching shoulder armor either. And they even say when you troop, you can pick one or the other, but when you apply, you have to have both on. But they don't have to match. And then you also need 2 gauntlets. Again, they have to cover the 2/3 of your forearm. And then there's some rules about your gloves, like your gloves have to be tucked into the gauntlets. They don't want to see any skin or bunched up sleeves at the wrist, which is fair. I mean, just making sure it's all tidy and neat, right? So those are the main requirements for the armor pieces. And then we're going to go on to, you know, you need the soft pieces, right? So you need flight suit and flak vest requirements. So your flak vest is what your like chest pieces are going to be stuck to. Your chest armor pieces are going to be stuck to. So it's really important that that's fitted and tailored properly, so you're not getting a lot of bunching or it's not sagging. You want to make it out of the proper kind of material, so something pretty heavy duty that can take the weight of your armor, because even if you're making your armor out of something fairly light, if you're not using a good enough fabric, you can really pull it down and then it won't look as good on you. They do say you can't use EVA foam for your armor, so it will be heavier than that. So you want to make sure that the fabric you choose for your flak vest is going to be pretty substantial. But they do give you some concession there. You can put different panels in. So if you want to use that as a pop of color for your character, you can put like different cutouts and panels in there, and then you can have zippers and that kind of stuff. They just have to color match, and you want to hide the like little zipper pulls, and that kind of goes for everything along in the Mando armors. Anything that has a zipper on it, you want to color match it, and you want to hide the pull. And any kind of clasp or buckle, you just want to make sure it looks like it could be out of Star Wars, right? You don't want it to look like an off-the-shelf in our kind of world sort of thing. So that means either paint it or cover it so it looks more Star Warsy, right? And then they give you a few specific requirements about the vest can't extend past your waist items, it shouldn't bunch, crease, sag, wrinkle, that whole thing. And that goes back to them wanting to have it look good, right? So if it's sagging and bunching and wrinkling, it's not necessarily going to look good. So, you know, that might look like a long list of requirements, but really it comes down to make it nice, make it sturdy, right? And then you have the flight suit. The flight suit needs to fit you pretty snugly. It needs to look tailored and fitted. It can't be like a baggy coverall. You can use a 2-piece flight suit if you'd like, but you have to hide that transition probably under a belt, things like that. They want it to look like a 1-piece. So you want it to be a solid color. You can't have printed fabrics in this guild. But you can have panels for accent fabrics. So just like the flak vest, if you want to have like a panel running down the side of your pants or something to cover, you know, on a hip or anything, something like that, you can do that with your flight suit as well as your flak vest to add a little bit of color or a little bit of dimension to your character, so you don't have to pick like one flat color and just do everything in that one flat color, right? So again, looking for those kind of spaces where you can be a little bit more creative, right? Something like cutouts or panels could be really creative for something like this. And then you want to look at things like you know, these are a lot of fit things. Again, hide your Velcro and your zipper pulls. Your sleeves can't protrude out the end of your gauntlet. You don't want to have, they are really specific about pockets on here. So like you have to remove any, like if you buy your flight suit, you have to remove any that are on the seat of your pants, and you have to sew any of the slip pockets on hips shut. Since I'm making mine, it's pretty easy. I'm just not going to add those. But what I am going to add is a pocket down, like kind of a cargo pocket down on the side of my leg, so that I have some place to like store my phone and things like that when I wear this out, because no pockets is kind of a problem. But I can get a little creative and not have those kind of pockets, but put a different pocket somewhere else, right? So then the only other thing they're super specific about is the collar of your flight suit needs to come all the way up so that your neck isn't exposed. And if that's not the case, they're going to make you wear like another covering so that your neck is fully covered. My helmet also comes down fairly far, so I shouldn't have any problem with that. But then there's just some other miscellaneous ones, right? So these are kind of the last minute things. So I'm planning to do a cape, so I had to look at that. They want to make sure that you're not just taking like a scrap of material, that they want it to look like a finished cape. And then you have to have either an ammo belt or a holster belt. You have to have all of your external strapping should be of either leather or that tactical webbing material, which is not a huge deal. Those are both really sturdy things anyway, so things that you would probably want to be using for this kind of build. Parachute clips, which are those like little 3-prong that go into the clip and then you gotta like pinch them down to release them. Those are parachute clips. Those should be like covered, modified, painted to make them look more Star Wars-y. You can't just have like a parachute clip hanging out there, which is good to know. Gloves can be full-fingered or fingerless, but you have to take any sort of, you know, logos, branding, anything like that off. And that goes for the whole thing. So if you buy any of these pieces, you want to make sure any sort of logos or branding is taken off or covered. Your boots, they're pretty specific about boots. I'm going to wear I have just black leather ankle boots that I think are going to work fine, but they don't want you to really have laces or eyelets in the front, and if you do, they want you to cover them. They want to be at least ankle height, and if you're going to do something with heels, they have to be a maximum of 3 inches, and they should be like a chunky heel or a wedge. No stilettos in the Mando marks, which I don't know why you'd want to walk around in that anyway, but just for that, always good to know. Like I said, no visible logos or branding. And here's the big one, is you must have a consistent level of wear and combat damage across all pieces. So if your helmet, for instance, is pretty battle damaged, you can't have brand new armor, right? So you want everything to look like it's of one piece. So that's something to keep in mind. And I'm planning to make 2 separate flight suits. So I'm planning to make like a hero suit that looks really nice and is really good. And then I'm planning to make one that's kind of weathered and torn up and like post-fight, right? So that way I could switch between the two if I want to, or you know, I could go with a more rugged look one day and then still have that like hero suit that I can put that doesn't have any rips or tears or wear in it. And then the only other requirement that they make you do is you have to carry at least 1 combat or ranged weapon. So something close, like a, you know, close combat, sword, whatever, or a ranged weapon. And they do specify no Jedi Mando crossovers, so you can't do a lightsaber unless you're carrying it as like a trophy, and it should look dismantled. So those are the requirements on that. So I'm planning to do probably a blaster and a long range rifle for mine. So that takes me to like, okay, I've distilled this packet down into like main points, right? Things that really will impact my design, right? And some construction stuff. So like there's other things in here that are all about construction. If you choose to do this, then that, right? So I've kind of decided how I'm going to be attaching my armor and that kind of stuff. And so I've taken the points that are pertinent to me. If you decide, oh, I'm going to actually like screw my armor on, then there are other requirements, right? You have to cover those screws, they can't be seen, that kind of thing. So you have to read it through and decide for yourself which pieces apply to you. But these are the ones that apply for me. And then I move into my design phase, right? So like I said, I already had an idea for my helmet, and Will over at Shonox Studios did such an awesome job painting mine for me. He did a custom job just for me based on my idea, and it turned out so well. I mean, I got it back and I was like, I'm nervous now to make mine because I've never done armor before, and this turned out so well that I want to do it justice by the rest of it looking good. But even just the level of detail he took in here, I wanted pretty good battle damage on it, but he also like added grime onto the like metal pieces and all kinds of stuff. I mean, he really went all out, and I couldn't be more pleased with it. I'm so excited to wear it. But that's the picture of my helmet. So from there, I knew, okay, I kind of have some colors going on, and I kind of have, you know, a feel that I want, right? So I had this big mythosaur on my helmet, and I went with a matte black on my helmet. So I knew I wanted the rest of my armor to be matte black to match that. But I also have these kind of studs that I want to place along the outside of the pieces of my armor, so it looks a little bit more, I don't know, rugged, I guess, a little bit spikier. So I'm going to add that to my armor, and you can see from my two versions here that I've drawn up, there's a little bit of difference between the two, right? So even within all of those requirements, I can still have a little bit of difference. If I decide I'm going to go shin armor versus to knee armor, holster belt versus ammo belts, what am I going to do with that flak vest? I'm planning on doing some inserts, and so like on the second drawing I had drawn in the inserts versus no inserts on the first one, different style of cape. So I'm going to kind of leave a lot of this open, but I have a pretty good idea of like what I want my end piece to look like, right? I know the kind of weapons I want to carry. I know the kind of things I want. You can see in the second version I added that pocket on the pants for myself, and I took kind of a take on Boba's pants from the original. He had this like pocket down at the bottom that he could keep things in, and I kind of want to keep something down at the bottom like that. And so, you know, I'm adding certain things back in as I kind of go through these requirements and go, oh, okay. At first I felt really restricted by it, but I knew I had this idea for my helmet, so I knew I was like, okay, I gotta find something that fits that, right? And this is kind of a dark, more harder edged helmet, so I want to keep that going throughout the rest of my gear, right? I'm gonna do black for most of it with pops of white in it. And that's the other thing I'm thinking about doing is like, don't discount things like decorative stitching. I can do a black flight suit with white stitching on it, and you'll get that kind of pop, and you'll see something cool and different. And as a bonus, I'll be able to hide, with my decorative stitching, I'll be able to hide any stitching that I need for like magnet pockets or Velcro strips or anything like that to attach my armor. I'll be able to hide the inside structure that I'll need for that underneath that decorative stitching. So don't discount the use of that either. You can use it as a nice cool pop to make your design look cool, but you could also use it as a functional tool to hide some stuff that you don't necessarily want to like advertise is there, right? So the other thing I'm thinking about doing is taking more of a hexagonal shape to my armor. So the base pattern will be from Bo-Katan, and then I'll just kind of change the top edges of her armor to look kind of hexagonal. And I have this pleather that we used on a different project that I have left over that has little hexagons on it. That's a black pleather, and so I'm going to use that as some inserts. And so that'll kind of carry that theme all the way through, right? So the thigh armor, same thing. Like instead of that kind of arched, rounded top that you see a lot of time, I'm going to have more of a straight, harder edged that goes more into a hexagonal shape, or even an octagonal shape. We'll see, you know, when we get there, we'll see like which way looks best, right? So that's kind of where I'm going with this. And really what I want you to take home from this video is that you can still be creative even if you have a long list of requirements, right? Even if you're like, oh, I just feel like I'm being stifled by all of these requirements. I don't know, you know, if I can even make something that 10 other people haven't already made, right? Think outside the box a little bit and really loophole the crap out of this, right? So if there's any loophole when you're like, oh, they don't mention this, take advantage of that and make it something that is designed for you and is different for yours, right? And then also just have fun with it. Like at the end of the day, I'm gonna try and apply to the Mando Mercs, and if I need a few tweaks here and there to make it, you know, into their guild specific, I'll be happy to do that. But at the end of the day, if they need massive changes, I'm really just gonna be happy with mine, and I'm gonna wear the crap out of it anyway. But I am doing it with them in mind. So I wanna try and get to them as closely as I can. And they do have message boards and all kinds of stuff that you can post and ask ahead of time if you're nervous about your specific design being approved. You can ask ahead of time, you can submit drawings, all that kind of stuff, and they'll help you kind of map that out. I just have a really specific design in mind that I like, and I want to go with it, and then I'll apply and make sure that it's all up to snuff after that. But that's how you would go through, that's how I go through all these requirements. If someone's given you a long list of things that they want to make sure they have on it, or, you know, if you're taking something from a friend or a customer that you're making for them, and they have this whole list of things, but you're like, oh, I don't really know how to make a design out of that. Just kind of start with one idea. If they have a color palette they really like, if they have, you know, one element that they really want in there, kind of take that and expand it, right? I knew I wanted to do something a little bit more geometric. I knew that I wanted this helmet with the mythosaur on it. So from there, I was able to build a whole cosplay off of that. And also just take one decision at a time, right? So I started with the helmet, and then I went, okay, I have a matte black helmet. That means I think I want to keep that matte black theme going and kind of have a whole overall darker look to my Mandalorian. So I'm going to keep matte black for the armor. Flight suit. Okay, flight suit's going to be black. But I also like the pop of white, so I'm going to use white whenever I can throughout the design to give that same pop and to make it all look cohesive. So just take it one decision at a time, and then no matter what, you can always go back to the rules later once you make a decision and you're like, I don't know if that fits. So just go and check and make sure it does. And if something needs to tweak slightly so that it fits into the rules or requirements, that's easy enough to do once you kind of have already decided on a few things down the road, right? So just don't be daunted by a whole list. You can really make your own unique set of Mandalorian armor and any cosplay for you. I hope this was helpful, guys. If you have any more questions, drop them in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them. And how do you guys decide when you're presented with a list of requirements? What's your design process? I'd love to hear about it. All right, guys, until next time, I'll talk to you later. Bye.